Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have a wonderful guest. Man, I am so grateful for these people all over the world. Kim White today, he's from Vienna, Austria, correct?
Well, I'm originally from Australia, but I'm living in Vienna right now.
Yeah, so he's from Australia, but he's in Vienna. I haven't been to Vienna or Austria at all, but I hear it's very beautiful. I went to Switzerland. I went to Italy. So I've been around there. I do need to go visit more places, though, because the world is, it's our playground, and we got to go play in it. Yeah, for sure. So what Kim does is he is like a life architect. He helps people with spiritual coaching of sort. He wants to help people break free from their things that are holding them back and achieve more freedom and peace in their life, and help people accept more of the unconditional love that we all have access to if we choose to accept it. So I'm super excited for this conversation. As many of you guys know, if you listen to this show a lot, I have a very deeply spiritual side to me. I also have some other sides of me that come out occasionally, but there is a spiritual side, and I'm really excited for this conversation, and I think it needs to be had. This, Kim, just so you know, my own spiritual philosophy, if I got to speak in front of 100,000 people in the Georgia Dome, that's the place I've chosen as of right now. That would be like my life's work complete, I think. And when I write a book, the book will be something about the concepts of Christ. But I've put a lot of time and energy and thought into this, and I love this concept. So I'm really, really deeply excited for this conversation and grateful that you chose to be on the Fuel Your Legacy show. So go ahead and share with us a little bit about your life, what you did pre this mission and calling, and what got you into it. How did you decide to really overcome any fear of what anybody else thought and just do it because it felt right to do?
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Sam. I'm pleased to be here and fascinated by what you're presenting to the world with the legacy. I think that's awesome. So what's my story? So all my life I've been sensitive, and growing up in Australia, if you're a guy and you're sensitive, you're a wuss, you're a wimp, you're weak. And so I always thought it was a negative thing in my life. And I'd play sports, which I loved, but I found it was harder for me to get into team sports. So I shifted my focus from teams to individual through running. And I started to get pretty good at my running, and that led me to the US. And I ended up going on a scholarship in Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff for track and field and cross country. Stepping back, so what happened was just before that, I actually asked myself a question, because I was thinking, how can we get better? That's like my mission is like, how can we improve? How can we get better? And I was asking myself, well, what if this weakness I have, this sensitivity, is actually a strength? And as soon as I changed my attitude and I saw it as a strength, it's like my whole world turned around. And suddenly it's like, because all my life people have been coming to me with their problems, but I didn't know what to do with it, right? And so it was just natural for me. And growing up, raised Catholic, my parents weren't really strict with the religion, but I had this calling deep inside of me. So I would just pray on my own, or I'd go to church, or jump on my bike and ride to church on Sunday, just because I had this feeling I should do it, but I didn't know why until later in my life. So as it went, I was training, and then I got injured a week before the Olympic trials, and I was really bummed because I already made the B qualifier. I just needed to get the A qualifier, and so it was like a real it just crushed me. But I said, okay, just got to move on. So I because that's my attitude, right? So I just like, all right, why did it happen? I started this journey of exploring, why did I get injured? How did this happen? And this took me, as I was just about finishing my degree in business, and I just, I started searching, and then I started studying kinesiology because I was a sportsman. How's the muscles affecting the body, and how restrictions in my running through the muscle groups restricting. And then I started to notice how our attitudes and our mindsets would affect the muscles. And having a certain mindset will contract the muscle or expand the muscle. So that was like totally fascinating for me. So I sort of like forgot about my running and started just deep diving into this whole exploration. And meanwhile, my spiritual's still there. I'm still praying, talking to God, asking for assistance. And then I graduated from college. And I thought I was going to go to grad school to study international business. I got accepted in San Diego. But I said, well, let me try this for a year. Let's see if I can do something with this. Because my friends were asking for help. They were starting to see changes in me. And they said, well, why don't you try it for a year? So I did, and that was 27 years ago. So I never turned back. It was just and I just love helping people. And so what I've done, which is quite unique, I took my spiritual and I combined it with my passion for business and sport. So I work with a lot of sporting teams, or I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, businesses, to help them to break through whatever blockages they have in their world and whatever's in the way of their goals. And 27 years now, and I'm just loving what I do.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this. So and we're going to go back to kind of the beginning, because I think this is a big, I have listeners from all over the world, and every culture is different. And in people's different culture, there are certain expectations or certain, it's just cultural rules, social rules that are somewhat expectations to be upheld. And when you're something outside of the cultural norm, then there's an issue with you. There's a problem, right? And so specifically to you as a listener, are you aware of what's culturally wrong in your culture? And do you feel like you fit into that? And then if so, and this is where Kim's going to help us, let's say you do feel that you are a cultural misfit, right? There's something that culturally is normal that you don't align with, identify with, or just isn't part of your soul. How do you mirror that? And the reason I think this is such an important question is the unfortunate reality is culture is constantly changing. And so you may be in culture right now, and we see this with there's a term that gets thrown around called cancel culture, right? But there's a certain what might be accepted culturally right now would never fly in 10 years from now. Stuff that we're curtailing movies and speech and all this type of stuff now that when I was younger and I grew up, we would play games, and anybody who hears this, don't be offended, okay? I'm not this person anymore, but the reality is we played a game called Smear the Queer, right? Like that was a game I grew up playing. And now, like, how absolutely politically incorrect is that whole entire phrase and game, like it would just never fly in today's society. So because their culture changes, what if the culture changes and you don't really identify with the new culture that's going on? How do you overcome that first within yourself? And then is it even a concern to try and help overcome it with the people around you? Or do you say, I'm not even going to worry about the people around me. I'm just going to make sure that I feel right about it. So can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot of people in our world.
That's a really good point, because growing up in Australia, as I said, with the sensitivity was one issue, but the other issue was if you got too good at whatever you're doing, you were pulled down. You were put down for being too good at your sport or whatever, or school. So there was this constant pulling down. And when I came to the US, I came for 2 weeks to race in the US. And I loved it so much I stayed for 6 years. But I was like, everyone loves a winner here. in the US, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing in Australia? This is my place. I need to be in the US because this is where this resonates with me. I love to win. I love to succeed. I love to grow. And so America had that consciousness that was really, really important for my future. And so that was pretty much a no-brainer. Okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to find a way to stay in the US. Of course, in every culture, there's also subcultures. And so I would find areas where it was not so like everyone loves a winner, and then there was other areas that it was. So I just kept focusing on different areas that would be resonant with my goals and my future. And so that was that. And then I've worked in 40 countries around the world, so I've seen all different cultures, all different energies, all different consciousness, different everywhere. So learning to accept everyone's differences was a really big part of my journey, and also to accept who I am and honoring my authentic self and what's right for me, and not pulling myself down or putting myself down because of that. That was the big learning in the early days.
So how describe that learning? Describe like what you went through to get okay with that, because I agree that the for myself, the thing that has given me the most healing, peace, freedom in my life is one, fully accepting myself and recognizing that I don't have to conform to other people. But part of that fully accepting is also fully accepting their reality and not expecting them entirely to conform with me. And so, but that's hard for people. That is counterintuitive. It's counter what's taught on social media. It's counter what's taught on TV. That is not a natural belief system that I've experienced, right? I think that most people don't naturally come to that conclusion. And so what are some of the steps that somebody could do if they're feeling this way, that they either are having to conform or they're expecting somebody else to conform? What are some steps they could do to foster that self-love and acceptance so that they aren't feeling held back by
that? First, you just said it. So the first thing is to accept yourself, that everybody is different. Everyone is unique. Everyone has advantages and disadvantages, or abilities and disabilities, if you want to put it that way. So not to judge yourself against what's the norm or what's common, but actually look as how can I, and the mantra I had right in the beginning when I had this breakthrough was, how may I serve? So I pray to God and say, okay, God, how may I serve? So you've given me this gift. How can I give it to the world? And so that was the first thing. Then I had to build up my own self. So accept myself. I love myself. I forgive myself for putting myself down or judging myself or trying to fit in when it was clear that I didn't, and just accepting that I'm bringing to the table a difference to help everybody, and everybody brings something different. If everyone's the same, it gets really boring. So if you accept who you are and what your beliefs are and your opinions and your talents and gifts and bring that to the table, then it's like you can contribute. And if you have that focus on how may I contribute or how may I serve, then it's easier to deal with it, because then you're so focused on that, you're giving. You're not, when you're worried about what everyone's thinking, you're taking, you're like pulling it in, all the energy in on yourself, and you become this robot to follow someone else's system. So really it's about, and it was really, oh my God, it was so hard in the beginning. The first one I tried was looking at myself in the mirror, and I couldn't even look at my face to say I love myself. And it took me a long time, just constantly, every day, going back to the mirror and saying, today I'm going to do it, and I didn't do it. And I go back again the next day, today is the day. And nope. And I just kept saying, but I'm not going to give up. And I just kept going until I could see my chin, then I could see my nose, then I could see my eyes. And then I could see deep into my eyes. I love myself. I forgive myself. And that was the breakthrough. And then I started getting chills in my body. It was like I was pushing stuff out that I've been carrying from my life experience. And so that was the beginning. And it was tough. It took a long time. So it took a few months to get to the point where I could see in my own eyes in the mirror. So that was how it started. Of course, accepting everyone's different is a big thing, because if everyone was the same, we'd be robots, it'd be boring. So, and what can I give? How may I serve? Asking that question, how can I contribute to others? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's step one.
I think that's a huge benefit. I love the in the mirror challenges, or I guess I consider them like a daily affirmation or just part of my routine. If I have one routine, I don't have a lot of routines in my life. In fact, I maybe to a detriment, but I tried to eliminate as many routines as I can because I like spontaneity, and I tried to foster spontaneity in my life because that was something that 5, 6, 7 years ago I was not spontaneous at all. It was so structured that there was zero room for spontaneity. Like I had to know a week out what I was doing or it didn't happen, and that has its benefits for sure, but it has its downside. So I've pendulum swung the other way. And now I'm still, for probably the last 6 years, I'm in the no routine philosophy. And I'm not saying it's great. I enjoy it. I feel happy and at peace with myself. Most high-level performers would say you need a morning routine. And so I'm going to say this is, if there is a morning routine in Sam's life, it is this one thing that every day when I get up, I do look in the mirror and I'm got my shirt off, I'm flexing, I'm loving myself, I'm dancing. And I engage with myself every day in the mirror. That's something that I do. I didn't realize necessarily that's something that's a daily thing, but it is. So thanks for bringing that up for me. I like to have these things that I don't realize I'm doing that are feeding my soul.
Well, and the second thing, that's the step one. Step two is actually to go below the neck. So you have to get out of your head and go down to your heart. And by putting your hands on your heart, sometimes you can't even feel your heart. All you feel is your hands on your chest because you're so disconnected. You're so much here because of the stress of life. So just spending time there. And then the next step is, can I feel my heart or feel my hands on my chest and say, I love myself from there? Instead of because if you just say it from your head, it's just words and means nothing. But if you can say it from your heart, it starts to reverberate through your whole body and it starts to transform you. So I love myself and I forgive myself and I accept myself, and doing that with your chest or in your heart is the next step to really have this huge transformation in your life. Yeah. Because the mind is only as powerful as when you're thinking about it. But the heart can be long-term powerful when you're not thinking about it. It just grows with time.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious, what from a culture perspective, because there are some people who are in either a subculture or a broader culture where people don't love a winner. So why do you think that was, that at that point in time in Australia where you were growing up? Why do you think it was that they didn't love a winner, that they wanted to pull people down if they got too successful? What was the cultural pull that kind of produced that type of behavior?
I think it goes back from the founding of Australia, since the European settlers came. It's just it's just been in their psyche for so long. Australians love the Australian team winning, the national team or the individuals. But if you do it within us, like against the world, but if you do it within the country, it's not as well regarded. So it's a harder work. So it's a bit like the story of the crabs in the bucket. One crab's trying to climb out, all the others are pulling him down. Or the tall poppy syndrome, where they cut you off if you stick your head up too high. Whereas in America, it's completely different. So when I went back to Australia, I started to look for people who had that more supportive attitude of growth, and start to track those people down. So I'm surrounding myself with that sort of mindset rather than just the common mindset. And then it's like you build up a bit of resistance. What's that saying? You're the result of the average of the 5 closest people you have in your life. And so who you're hanging out with. Mm-hmm. And then the reason I do that is because it helps to build your strength up so you can be of service to anyone. But if you're weak, then you can't give. So you've got to be in this place where you're strong enough to give, so that when people come who need help, you're able to give to them because you have that extra energy. Yeah. So it's not necessarily good or bad what the culture is. It's just, where do people want to grow, and do you have the energy to give to support them in that growth?
Absolutely, I agree. So I want to talk about, because this is something, there's been a lot of neuropsychology research on this topic. as far as what happens in your mind actually affects your muscles. They've done studies where it's like, hey, we're going to have 10 people who are going to actually go practice basketball. Then we're going to have 10 people who practice basketball half the time, and then they practice the mindset, like they envision themselves practicing basketball and having these perfect shots. And then we're going to have another 10 people that spend a week, and all they do is visualize themselves doing it perfectly. And then we're going to see who has the best results. And the group that actually was physically doing the practice, they performed the worst. And depending on which research you look at, then you have either one of these visualizing groups that are going to outperform. But the fact that the group that just visualized and never practically did anything, they were doing better than the person who was actually physically practicing, that's a big, like, boom, that you can do better if you are intentionally visualizing. But I want to talk about this because you present yourself as a spirituality consultant type thing, but then you mirror this with sports, you mirror this with other things. I'm curious, how would you define the difference between spirituality, mindset, and the actual hard science data of what's being produced? Like, how would you separate those two? Because then there's people who are like, well, I don't believe in anything spiritual, and they just want to talk about the science of it. There's people who are like, I don't really believe in spiritual or the science, but mindset's all it is, right? So it's a label that we're giving a certain concept, but I do believe that there is some separation even between the concepts. So could you speak to that a little bit and how you would separate those three things, spirituality, mindset, and science?
Well, I would say they're all important because I look at all three because they're all if you're interested in growth, they're all essential, every aspect. You can't just do one and not the others because they need, if you want maximum results. Just like your example you gave with the basketball, right? The guys who practice as well as visualize, they got the best results because they were using above the neck and below the neck together, and that's how you get the results. I was very scientific in my early days of the work, even though I was spiritual as far as praying. I didn't realize that the sensitivity was actually my intuition. And that was God talking back to me. So that's my legacy, is teaching people to listen to God speaking to you. And then taking the action, you have to take the action to have a reality in reality on the planet. So, and the science is great because it gives so much food for the mind to understand. Because if you don't have a lot of faith, you need a lot of science to support you. If you have faith, you don't need any science. So it's like all these aspects are really essential for depending where you're at in your own development, your own belief systems and so forth. Mindset is very important across the board because depending what you focus on, you attract. So it's just like Google, you put a question into Google, you're going to get answers. You ask your mind a question, your mind's going to go searching for an answer because your mind is like a computer. It has to. It's like it can't not. But then if you want the internet, the mind is only as good as the hard drive, right? But if you connect to the internet, which is going to your heart, then you can get the spiritual side. You can get a bigger picture across the planet, just like you're connecting worldwide, globally. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's like there's the different aspects of it.
Well, I think it's a more than one question. It's definitely a discussion here that we're going to have. But so let's talk about spirituality as a specific unit and your coaching specifically. Have you found, or you've been doing this for a while now, how often do you have people who come in and they just refuse to believe in God? They refuse to use the language of God. Okay. And I just consider it a narrative. They refuse to use the language of God and accept that, like, okay, I'm going to connect to God. And because of whatever past trauma or whatever else, that just doesn't compute in their brain because they have so much hardwired other programming that when that word comes up, God, that when that sound comes up, it throws them into a bad program rather than into an effective program. So they refuse to believe it. They've decided that God doesn't exist because it's easier for their mental health to believe so. How do you help those people? Are they just not clients of yours because you're
No, I've had a lot of clients that don't believe in God. And what I've found over the years is those that don't believe in God, the side effect is that it's harder for them to get help. Even though they might have teams around them, the fact that they can't ask, like asking God for help, even if they try to ask their team members to help them, it doesn't go to the team member. The message doesn't get there, and then they get even more frustrated because they're not being heard. So asking God for help or believing in God gives you the power to not be an island, gives you the power to ask for help. So that's what I found. I found that the clients that didn't believe in God, it was really hard work for myself and for them. And the results were a lot harder for them to receive. Those that believed in God, depending on the level of the belief, it was really fast or it was slower. Just depends on every person's level of connection. And I mean, I remember one lady, she came in and she just sat down in the chair and instantly the energy just left her. And I go, what happened? She goes, I feel amazing. What? So I found out the reason that she had such a transformation was because she had so much faith. She just had to turn up. That's all she needed to be, was there. She prayed so much for help that as soon as she turned up, she asked for help from the human side. It just happened instantly. So that was the best example of how someone who has a strong faith or connection or belief in God can have a massive result. And then when I have a client that doesn't believe in God, there's two types. There's those that say they don't believe in God and they don't, and you can feel it's like talking to a brick wall. It's like they have to do everything themselves. It's like a hard life. Life is really a struggle. They have to prove everything on their own. And then those who say they don't believe in God, but I can feel the energy of God with them. So it's just like a mental block. It's not a spiritual block. They still have the heart, even though they say, well, I don't believe in God. It's sometimes because they don't know God, but they have it. I feel it with them. It's like, God's with you. I can feel it. It's clear. It's just a mental or conscious thought. It's the mindset. Doesn't affect your life. So there's different levels. So the main thing is those that believe in God have the ability to ask for help. Those who don't believe in God, it's a struggle to ask for help.
So when you're working with somebody who doesn't believe in God, like the brick wall type doesn't believe in God, does showing them the actual data of like, this is what somebody's mind looks like when they believe in God, this is, or mind, heart, like actual neuron pathways, electrolyte, like we can track all this. It's not like, this is the funny thing about science is like, it's not like we can't track the energy of your thought or the energy of your heart. We can track it. So like if we can empirically through tracking of electrons show you that just accepting and believing X, Y, and Z produces more actual energy and power inside of your soul than this other way of believing, that doesn't help them believe at all. It's just like, well, I still don't believe in God.
It depends. It depends on their level of stubbornness.
So what do they have to gain by? What do they have to gain by being stubborn about their belief? Like, is that where you go?
Because they want to prove that they're right. That's it. They're just such an island in the world. They don't know how to be in community. They don't know how to be in, even though they might have people around them, they don't know how to relate because they have this blockage, this wall. So life is a struggle for them. And it doesn't matter how much data you give. And someone who doesn't have faith, no amount of data will fulfill them. No number of answers will give them peace. Someone who has faith, no question is required because they just know.
So does it ever help to, because I mean, I've worked with these groups of people, and this is why I'm being so specific about this. So lucky all the listeners who are like, he's talking about me. No, I'm not talking about anybody specific. But does sometimes changing, I mean, at my level, because of how many people I've coached, I've just decided they're all narratives, all religion, everything. They're all narratives. Every different language has a different sound that represents the same concept. Right. And so in English, when we're using the English words, we say God, and it sounds right. God is the kind of the sounds that phonetically we sound out, and it's whatever. Right. So that's in our language. But if we go into Spanish or anything else, they don't say God. Like they would never use the word God to represent the same concept that I'm representing when I say God. And so because I'm okay with the fact that it's all a narrative, they're all just letters and sounds that we've ascribed meaning to, does it, for those people who choose not to believe in God, does it ever help to just use a different sound but still ascribe it to the same concept and say, hey, well, this is the concept we're going to talk about, we're going to call it voodoo or whatever, right? I don't care, whatever you call it. Woohoo, we can call it
Great Spirit.
Universe, we can call it the Great Supreme, we can call it
Infinite Love.
Yeah, love, whatever. We can call it whatever.
You know what? God doesn't, I'm sure God doesn't care what you call him. It's just that you call him.
Right. And I don't know.
That's it.
The reality is every language, because we have different languages, the fact of the matter is the sounds are different in different cultures and languages. So I have not really connected as much to the sound as I've connected to the concept. And so in my coaching, I've sometimes said, well, okay, let's just leave those sounds out of it. All the sounds that trigger you, and like, again, on a computer, you push this button, it produces a result. Hey, if saying this sound, if this one sound is going to produce a bad result in your life, let's never use that sound again. Let's go use a different sound, but still get to the same concept and accept the same concept. So I'm wondering, when you've done that, does that sidestep somebody who is like a brick wall when it comes to God, or does that person still not accept it because the concept of accepting something outside of themselves is too repulsive to their...
That's it. That's the stubbornness I'm talking about. They're so focused on, they're so committed to failure, so to speak, that they won't adjust to change. So it's really, for me, it's really about the sincerity. What level of sincerity do you have when you're talking to God, the Great Spirit, infinite love, whatever you want to call it? Your level of sincerity is the key. And if the sincerity is there, you're going to connect. Just like if you're talking to a friend, you know, the level of sincerity, if someone's just saying words, you know, they don't care. But if they have a sincere connection with you, you feel it. And that's all it is with God. It's all about the sincerity. How much you really want to connect. Doesn't matter the name. You know, obviously you want the light. You don't want to go to the dark, and if you want to grow, right, in the entrepreneurs I work with. So, yeah, it's and the universe is a different story altogether, because the universe has positive and negative, light and dark. So if you're talking to the universe, who are you calling? Is it the light or the dark? Is it the result you really want? So you have to be very specific. So the sincerity is what you're really going for.
So
going for love.
Yeah, on the token or on the topic of the universe, I'm curious from that perspective, because I've never heard anybody say it like you just said it, like the universe has light and dark, so you got to be more specific. I would say either God, infinite intelligence, whatever, also has a light and dark, which a lot of people don't want to accept, or God, right? And again, we're using the English sounds and tones for this, but or God is more like, we're really just saying God is the attribution of the positive side of the universe. And I'm not sure which one is more accurate. I'm curious, you know, again, I don't get to talk to so many people about this as in depth as we are. So I'm grateful for this conversation, but like, where would you say that is God just is the concept that we call God just more attributing to the positive side of the universe? And so if we use the universe, we have to have another way of ascribing to the positive side of the universe? Or is God equal to the universe and God has both negative and positive inside of him?
I think God created the universe.
Okay, so let's say
so when I can give you examples, like when I've seen people working, doing healing or whatever, and I look at them and they're calling on the universe. Sometimes the spirits that are assisting them, they're even a lower consciousness than them. And the person they're working on ends up with a headache or gets pain that they didn't have before. And I asked them, why didn't you call on God? Well, I called the universe. Well, the universe has both, positive and negative. So you don't know what you're going to get if you ask. But if you're really specific, I want to work with the light, the angels, whatever, the spirits of high frequency in God's consciousness, on that light level, you're going to attract that energy because you're inviting it. But if you're asking the universe, you can invite anything to come. And so I've seen that actually happen. And when someone says to me, I pray to the universe, I actually feel the torment that they have in themselves of they've got both sides like battling. And I was like, wow, you're exhausting yourself by calling that. Why don't you just focus on the light or focus on the dark if you want to go that way, you know? Because the people who go for the dark, they're really focused on the dark. It's like there's no doubt. They don't call the universe at all. They go straight for the dark. And it's like, okay, well, that's your choice. You know, I'm not going there.
And to be fair, again, I'm not a condemner of anybody. I definitely judge because judging is I think we have to make judgment calls, right? So we have to judge about what's going to work for us. And that's where I would say judging is once we actually start assigning what's good or bad for somebody else or for ourselves, then I think we're into condemnation territory. But I think we all have to judge, right? And judge for, hey, what's right for ourselves, and then act accordingly. But I think that to be fair to all parties here, even though I choose to live in the light rather than in the darkness as much as possible, I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody who no,
I don't know anyone who is
who 100% is living in light. I don't know anybody there, but I'd love to. If you believe you're one of those people, please reach out to me, right?
I got my dark just like everyone else.
Yeah, I know I got my darkness. So, but there are a lot of people who they are more productive focusing on the dark, focusing on the motivation, focusing on the fear-based motivation. You can accomplish great things there. I don't think you're going to find as much fulfillment and happiness. That's my own personal perspective and experience. But can you become successful and wealthy and accomplish your goals and all of those things operating from a dark energy? You absolutely can. I just don't think there's fulfillment and happiness at the end of that road based on my experience with myself and others that I've worked with. Anyways, can you speak to that a little bit? The people who
from my experience, if you ask the dark for help like that, they're there because they want to recruit you. If you ask God for help or the light for help, it might take a little bit longer because it may not be good for your soul. So it takes a little longer. But once you start getting sucked into the dark giving to you, it's like the greed takes over and you want more and more. It's like this thirst. And it doesn't matter who you hurt on the way or who you destroy, the greed consumes you, and you lose yourself. Basically, it's like the old thing, selling your soul, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So and if someone is sensitive, they know it when they do something to hurt themselves because it feels bad, and it's like, oh man, I don't want to do that to myself ever again. Whereas someone who is really stuck in their head, they can't feel. They just see the result and they want more and they get thirsty for more of the result, but it's never fulfilling. Like you said, you feel empty, even though you've gone for it. There's hugely successful people that do it all with the light, very successful. So it's just a choice, and they have great lives. They have happy lives. They're not stressed. They have lots of friends. They don't have so-called friends or, fake people around them.
Yeah.
So,
Just a personal experience of that, because it's on top of my mind because I've been talking to some of my other friends and family about it. But like I say, most of the time I step into the light. And to your point about, when you stepped into the darkness, earlier in my marriage, we had just had our first baby, and my wife was struggling with postpartum depression and things. Mm-hmm. And there was a point in time where she was saying, "Hey, look, you need to spend more time at home, and like, why are you always gone? Why are you always working? We have to find a better balance here." And there was times when I used the same phrase in the light and it wasn't a problem. But there was one specific time that I remember that I was using it as a manipulation tool, right? Mm-hmm. And I know, and I felt it, and I was like, ooh, I don't really like that, right? And so then mm-hmm. we reconciled, and that's when I finally backed off, is when I recognized, hey, if I keep saying this, it might be effective. And it was that, look, yes, I'm out there working, and yes, you have stresses at home, but I have stresses at work. So if you want to trade places, let's do it, right? You're going to keep complaining. Well, you can go earn the income. Like, let's go see you do what I do. And then you can see how much crap I get at work. And then maybe you won't complain so much. Right. And that was rather than seeking to gain common ground and understanding, which you can do in the light and have the same conversation. So there's more understanding and compassion towards each other and what each other's going through. I was in that one instance. I will never forget where I was sitting at my kitchen table, where my wife was. I'll never forget when I used that, and it was clear to me that I was saying that out of a not loving mm-hmm. to build unity, but to build I'm done having this conversation. I'm done, right? And it was mm-hmm. to shut her up rather than to mm-hmm. actually build unity. And I knew that when it happened, I knew exactly what happened. I was like, okay. So then, over the next day or two, we worked it out, and we resolved it in a more loving way. But I do believe that when you are going against what is right. That's my personal belief. It for the most people. Some people, maybe they've done it so long they don't know anymore. But when mm-hmm. I did it, I was like, okay, that stepped into the dark energy of manipulation rather than persuasion or understanding or compassion.
Yeah. And depending on how much, like you said, someone's been doing it for so long, they can't wheel themselves out of it. They're like, they're going down a rabbit hole, and they can't pull themselves back out. And even though they can see themselves doing it, and it's killing them inside, they're so wound up in the addiction that they can't stop themselves. Mm-hmm. And take someone really, really caring to really help them to get out of that. So, but it's lucky that you recognized it and you took action immediately, because that's the thing. The faster you take action when you make a mistake, the better the result, the more you grow. If you sit on it for too long, it's like, it's not good.
Absolutely. So if somebody wanted to have a conversation with you, work with you, be coached by you, where would they go, and what would that look like?
You can go to my website, kimwhitecoaching.com. And I have some free downloads there where you can learn about different techniques to help you with your energy, and also find out about workshops I have and private sessions, one-on-one sessions as well. So that's all on the website, kimwhitecoaching.com.
Awesome. Love it. Go to kimwhitecoaching.com. Also, those links will be in the show notes here, so you can just swipe up on your phone and find all that information. So now entering Legacy on Rapid Fire. This is 5 questions, 1 word, 1 sentence answers. You ready to go?
Sure.
Perfect. So what do you think is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
1 word. Well, it's always fear.
Perfect.
It's always fear.
Okay.
That's it.
And what's the hardest thing you've accomplished in your life to this point?
The hardest thing, waking up in the morning? No. That's a good question. Hardest thing that I've accomplished. Well, the biggest negotiation I ever did was probably the hardest, and it was the best. The result was the best because of it.
Okay. And what's the greatest accomplishment you've had to this point in your life?
helping people. It's got to be having that connection, feeling God's love, and then transforming people's lives is like the greatest accomplishment, more than anything material.
Love it. And what is one secret habit, mindset, or behavior that you believe contributes the most to your success?
I love myself.
Me too. I love that as well. What are one or two books that you would recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
I really, in the last year, there's two books that really stood out to me that I read. One was Matthew McConaughey's book on green lights, his life story. So that was really fantastic to learn about his upbringing with his father and the faith in the household and so forth. And the other book from a physical standpoint would have to be Breath by James Nestor, where he goes deep, he deep dives on how we can use breathing to assist our health, our wellness, everything on all levels. Brilliant. So those two in the last year were my favorites for sure.
Fantastic. So this is the last question. It's called, I want to know what legacy are you building. So we're going to pretend that you've died, and maybe your grandchildren or nieces and nephews, or people in 6 generations from now, they're sitting around the kitchen table discussing your life and what the impact you had, the legacy you left. What do you want them to be saying about your legacy 6 generations from now?
Helping people to follow their intuition. That's my legacy.
Awesome. I love it, guys. This has been a very enlightening conversation for myself. I'm so grateful for you, Kim, to be able to come on here and share this with it, even though we're on the other side of the world, making time to be here for each and holding that space. I super, super appreciate it. And definitely, if you guys got value out of this, you want to use some of those free resources, you want to connect to him, go do that, right? The links are in the bio, but please just go do that, because I think that this conversation needs to be had, and there's a different person for everybody to have the conversation with, right? My personality, not everybody likes my personality or my way of reasoning, and so some people get offended by it, and they say, I'm not interested. Okay, that's fine, but there's somebody for everybody. Kim and I probably explain and go about things differently, even though we have the same objective. We have the same goal, that's to help you achieve more peace, love, joy, and fulfillment in your life and freedom. We do it differently, right? Even though it's the same concept, where end goal is the same, we're going to do it differently. So go check his stuff out, please. And we will catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.